What's up guys, it's the Electronic Helper 3 here again, and today I'm back with another chess video. The first one was my favorite trap, the Blackburn Shilling Trap. If you have not seen that, go check that out. Very nice to use, very nice to play, and very devastating to your opponent. In this game, I'm going to cover part of my favorite opening, the Queen's Gambit. This video will be specifically for the traps derived from it. We'll create a separate video for Queen's Gambit accepted without the traps, just a normal game, and also Queen's Gambit decline. This video, however, will just cover the traps out of the Queen's Gambit. Now, if you don't know what the Queen's Gambit is, it basically starts with d4, d5, and c4, and white is gambiting this pawn on c4. Now, really, it's not a true gambit, as most chess grandmasters would call it, because if black takes this pawn, they're going to have a very hard time holding on to it, and that's what I'm going to demonstrate in this video. How if black tries to hold on to that pawn, they're going to be in a world of hurt. So once again, this video is only on the traps, so if you're looking for Queen's Gambit accepted without the traps, there should be an annotation on the screen, as well as Queen's Gambit declined. So let's get into it. So after pawn takes pawn on c4, white has the sneaky move and attack as well as development of e3. So not only does this develop a piece trying to gain control of the center, but also unleashes an attack on on the pawn on c4. Now black has two ways to develop, to protect this pawn. The first way is bishop to e6. Now, in this position, we're just going to play a normal game and just be ready to get that bishop out of there. So, to start with development of a knight c3, say knight c6, knight f3, knight f6. These are all normal moves that will probably happen or some variation in a game. Now, black has the move knight to g5, and the bishop can't go anywhere where the knight is where the pawn will be defended without being captured or have threat of capture. So oftentimes you'll see a normal move, maybe g7, looking to fianchetto his bishop, and if he does that, you can just capture pawn, and after pawn takes knight, you have bishop takes pawn, and this looks about even. However, black has the better pawn structure and can castle. White has the better pawn structure and can castle, as well as pretty decent development, as well as having the bishop pair still intact. Now, if let's say we have bishop coming to d5, still trying to cling on to this pawn, white has two options. The first option is knight takes bishop on d5, and then usually you'll see knight takes knight, and then pawn takes bishop, getting that pawn back. However, queen can also capture this knight, and not only defend this pawn, but also attack our knight here. And so this prevents us from capturing and also forces us to do something about this knight here. So that's not necessarily ideal. However, most of the time you will see knights recapture, but if you don't, then you could be in trouble. However, there are many ways to exploit an open queen in the opening. Anyway, so in this position, the suggested move is just to play e4. Now this bishop will be really kicked out and probably killed. After bishop to e6, only saving move, you now have d5, and now what? Black's best move will probably be to capture the pawn. Their pawn is captured here. Now black is up a whole piece. If recapture with the knight, knight takes knight, or probably even better, you have bishop takes pawn. After knight takes knight, pawn takes knight, and white is winning. So that's what happens if the bishop tries to defend. Now let's go back and see the other way to defend, which is simply playing b5. In this position, white has the forcing move of a5 himself, and now usually you'll see either a6 or c6 played. First, I'm just going to go over just in case. Usually you won't see this, but if b takes on a4, you can recapture the queen. This is check. After bishop blocks, you can capture this pawn on c4. And if knight blocks the check, you can capture with a bishop if you'd like. And then look to play, let's just play a random move there, and then look to play queen b3, threatening that f7 square and threatening checkmate. Anyway, however, that is not really a trap, and that's not really what we're going to be seeing. Now, in order to defend this pawn, black has three options. First option is the easiest to calculate and easily the worst from a simple point of view, as after a6 and pawn takes, if pawn takes, then rook takes rook on a8, and now black would be down a whole rook. Not very good. So there's one trap. Now the other trap, which is harder to calculate and spot, is c6. In this position, we're also going to capture the pawn on b5. When pawn recaptures, there's an absolute killer move, and that is queen plays to f3. Now the best move in this situation is knight to c6. As you can see, queen is attacking the rook. Rook can't move, so the only way to save it is knight to c6, and then after capturing the knight, bishop comes to d7. Now queen can't capture rook because it's defended, but queen just moves off to a6 and is up a piece. Finally, the last way to defend it, and arguably the most crushing, is with the bishop. If bishop defends the pawn, becoming seemingly part of the pawn chain, bishop moves to d7, then we can play pawn takes pawn, and after bishop takes pawn, there is a crusher move. Now it is not queen to f3, because that can be easily countered with c6, as it is now defended by the bishop and that knight. The move is actually knight to c3, seemingly a normal natural move, but having lots of implications on the game. As you can see here, the only way to defend this bishop, or excuse me, defend the pawn on c4 is to move the bishop to a6, and if they do that, they're really in trouble, because after queen f3, the only way to really defend this rook is to play c6, and now white's rook can come in and capture that bishop on a6, winning the bishop. Now, if black tries to defend, or excuse me, if black tries to recapture, they're in a lot of trouble. If knight takes rook, then queen takes pawn. Check, because because knight moving from the b8 square took the only defender of the c6 pawn away. Now, black only has one move, and that is to block with the queen. And after queen takes rook, check, and queen moves back down to d8, you can deliver check again. After queen blocks, you can also win that knight. And also, this pawn on c4 will also be yours next move. Okay, so that was my video on the Queen's Gambit accepted traps, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Look forward to, or please view, the other two videos I'm going to make or have made on the Queen's Gambit, and I'll see you guys next time. Hope you guys enjoyed, hope you guys learned. Please comment, rate, subscribe.